Good evening. Welcome to Loveworld USA News. I'm TGK Andre. First, let's take a quick look at the top stories this evening. President Trump says Iran becoming more aggressive in nuclear talks as U.S. reviews options. RFK Jr. fires entire U.S. vaccine advisory panel over conflict concerns. Federal prosecutors reject immunity claim by Milwaukee judge accused of aiding illegal immigrant. Representative Issa calls for investigation into LAPD's delayed response to ICE assaults during LA riots. And UK sanctions Israeli ministers over Palestinian violence remarks. And now to the news. President Donald Trump said Tuesday that Iran has taken a more aggressive posture in ongoing nuclear negotiations, warning that Tehran's new demands are not acceptable, indicating that the talks have shifted unexpectedly. Senior administration officials confirmed Iran had continued advancing its enrichment program while making little diplomatic progress. The comments come as U.S. Central Command's outgoing leader, General Michael Kurilla, testified before Congress that Iran remains the #1 malign influence in the Middle East. Kurilla said Tehran has doubled its uranium enrichment capacity in the past 6 months and confirmed that military operations had been presented to the president. Still, he favored a diplomatic solution to avoid regional conflict. Meanwhile, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, traveling with the president to Fort Bragg, defended the administration's proposed $1 trillion defense budget during a House hearing earlier Tuesday. The budget includes over $62 billion to modernize U.S. nuclear capabilities, including all 3 legs of the strategic triad. Lawmakers raised concerns about emerging threats from Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. Congressman Chuck Fleischmann from Tennessee noted that America's current nuclear posture lacks forward-deployed non-strategic weapons in the Indo-Pacific, calling it a capability gap. Hegseth responded by affirming the need for triad modernization to preserve U.S. deterrence against rising global threats. Watch this.
President Donald Trump has said that the U.S. will also hold fresh nuclear talks on Thursday, adding that Tehran's negotiations were tough and that a deal was not there yet. Speaking at an Invest America roundtable discussion, Trump said Iran's insistence on enriching uranium has a big impediment to the deal.
We have a meeting with Iran on Thursday, so we're going to wait till Thursday.
And what's the main impediment to getting a deal?
Well, they're just asking for things that you can't do. They don't want to give up what they have to give up. You know what that is. They seek enrichment. We can't have enrichment. We want just the opposite. And so far, they're not there. I hate to say that because the alternative is a very, very dire one, but they're not there. They have given us their thoughts on the deal, and I said, it's just not acceptable.
Trump also spoke to Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and said that he was trying to make a deal so that there's no destruction and death, adding that they would soon find out what Iran decides to do. According to the Israeli Prime Minister's office, Trump told Netanyahu that he plans to hold another round of talks with Iran over the weekend.
So we're trying to make a deal so that there's no destruction and death. And we've told him that, and I've told him that, and I hope that's the way it works out. But it might not work out that way. We'll soon find out. Yep.
U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has dismissed all 17 members of the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, the government panel responsible for vaccination recommendations. The decision, announced in the Wall Street Journal, was based on what Kennedy called persistent conflicts of interest and a lack of public trust. Secretary Kennedy argued that many HSIP members had close ties to pharmaceutical companies, undermining impartiality. While committee members are required to disclose potential conflicts and recuse themselves from relevant votes, Kennedy claims the system promotes industry-aligned decision-making. Medical professionals and health groups have criticized the move. The American Medical Association warned that the firings could worsen vaccine hesitancy and disrupt public health efforts, especially amid current measles outbreaks and declining vaccination rates. Critics also raised concerns that Kennedy may appoint vaccine skeptics, impacting insurance coverage for key immunizations. The ACIP was scheduled to meet in late June to vote on updated recommendations for COVID-19, flu, and other vaccines. Kennedy has not yet named replacements, and some experts allege he is bypassing standard procedures in selecting new members. Let's take a look.
This morning, a massive change by Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. removing all members of the CDC's Vaccine Advisory Committee, which makes recommendations on the safety and efficacy of vaccines. Members getting a notice saying this email serves as formal notice of your immediate termination. Kennedy releasing a statement saying, "Today we are prioritizing the restoration of public trust above any specific pro or anti-vaccine agenda." Kennedy argues a clean sweep is needed to restore public trust, claiming the committee had conflicts of interest, adding the Biden administration appointed all 17 current members, with 13 of them last year. But critics have called this change dangerous and partisan.
Federal prosecutors have rejected a motion to dismiss charges against Milwaukee County Circuit Judge Anna Dugan, who was accused of helping an illegal immigrant evade federal authorities in a courthouse incident which was captured on surveillance video. Dugan is facing federal charges of obstruction and unlawful concealment after allegedly escorting domestic battery suspect Eduardo Flores Ruiz out of the building during an ICE enforcement operation. Dugan's legal team argues she is protected by judicial immunity and that the charges violate the Constitution's separation of powers. However, prosecutors responded that judges are not immune from criminal prosecution and accused Dugan of acting outside her judicial duties. According to court filings, Dugan confronted ICE agents, directed them elsewhere, and personally guided the suspect and his attorney to a private exit while knowing agents were present to serve an arrest warrant. The Department of Justice states Dugan took these actions despite recently acknowledging ICE's authority to make arrests in courthouse hallways. Surveillance footage appears to support the prosecution's timeline, showing Dugan leaving her bench, interrupting another courtroom session, and facilitating the suspect's departure through a non-public area. Dugan has pleaded not guilty and faces up to 6 years in prison if convicted. Her trial is scheduled for July 21st. The case has drawn national attention over concerns about local interference in federal immigration enforcement and whether elected officials are held to the same legal standards as other citizens. More stories after this break. Don't go anywhere.
This is the month of June. And you already know this June is the month of prayer. And that means that we're going to pray more than we usually do. We're going to add some extra time to our praying. First of all, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I usually send out posts to you for prayer. But in the month of June, every Tuesday, and every Thursday, and every Saturday, you should get messages from your church and your cell on prayer. You're going to be praying, and then also early morning praying. It'll be according to the time zones. All right? So early morning in your time zone.
Welcome back. California Congressman Darrell Issa is demanding a congressional investigation into claims that the Los Angeles Police Department delayed responding to federal officers under attack during Friday night's anti-ICE riots. According to the Department of Homeland Security, over 1,000 rioters surrounded a federal facility, damaging property and assaulting ICE agents, who reportedly waited nearly 2 hours for local law enforcement backup. LAPD Chief Jim McDonnell denied the allegation, stating in a Sunday press conference that the officers arrived within 40 minutes and attributed the delay to traffic congestion. However, DHS Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin reaffirmed the department's timeline, saying ICE agents were left without support as violence escalated. She noted that officers faced tire slashing, assaults, and building defacement before LAPD arrived on scene. Issa questioned whether political leadership in Los Angeles or Sacramento played a role in the alleged delay, calling for transparency and accountability. "We need to know if anyone instructed the LAPD to stand down," Issa said, warning that federal officers under attack by rioters deserve immediate support, not bureaucratic hesitation. The unrest followed immigration enforcement actions by ICE and has sparked broader scrutiny over local officials' handling of federal operations. While some California Democrats labeled the protests peaceful, law enforcement reported dozens of arrests, including charges of attempted murder and assault on officers. DHS continues to coordinate with local agencies to restore order amid ongoing tensions. Watch this.
It was about supremacy when Eisenhower sent troops in to Alabama. It was about supremacy when Lyndon Johnson did it. When the Constitution, when citizens are not being protected by their state, they have every right to be protected. In this case, law enforcement was overwhelmed by insurrectionists. The president saw that. As a matter of fact, our ICE agents called for support and waited 2 hours before they got any relief. So no question at all, there was a...
Google has revamped its internal learning platform, Grow, to focus primarily on artificial intelligence and job-related priorities, according to internal communications reviewed by CNBC. The platform, once known for offering a wide range of courses, from 3D printing and Rubik's Cube solving to personal finance, will now concentrate on AI tools and technologies deemed essential to the company's operations. The overhaul reflects a broader shift in Silicon Valley, where companies are racing to align employee training with the demands of generative AI. Google, like other major tech firms, is cutting back on non-essential programs and redirecting resources towards initiatives that support profitability and competitive positioning. The company confirmed that previously scheduled Grow courses were canceled this spring, and content that is no longer aligned with business priorities has been archived. In a statement, Google said it maintains an active learning culture, but acknowledged the need to refresh Grow to help employees find the most relevant learning opportunities. Internal memos noted that many legacy courses were unused or no longer relevant to the company's current direction. Employees commented on internal forums that the shift reflects a renewed focus on efforts that contribute directly to Google's bottom line. The move follows broader cost-cutting efforts across the company, including layoffs and reductions in diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Google's financial leadership has signaled a commitment to streamlining operations, aligning with tech industry trends toward efficiency and accountability amid growing competition in the AI sector. Warner Bros. Discovery announced plans to separate into two publicly traded companies by mid-2026, dividing its operations between a streaming and studios business, led by HBO Max and film properties, and a global networks unit that will house CNN, TNT Sports, and Discovery. CEO David Zaslav will head the streaming and studios entity, while current CFO Gunnar Weidenfels will lead the global networks company. The decision reflects an industry-wide shift as traditional pay TV declines and media companies seek profitability through streaming. WBD, formed through a 2022 merger, has been reevaluating its assets and reported a $9.1 billion write-down on its TV network segment last year. Executives said the split will allow each business to focus on distinct market challenges and improve financial performance through sharper strategic alignment. The move follows similar restructuring at Comcast, which is spinning off its cable networks into a separate entity. Both companies are reacting to ongoing revenue declines in the legacy cable model while maintaining profitability in those units. Despite reduced viewership, live sports and cable news remain key cash generators, and Weidenfels said the network's arm will retain most of the company's outstanding debt and continue to produce free cash flow. Warner Bros. Discovery has reduced its debt by $19 billion, but still holds nearly $34 billion in net debt. The company said the division will allocate the majority of that debt to the global networks unit while maintaining liquidity in both entities. Zaslav also suggested the new structure provides flexibility for future consolidation in the media sector facing what he called generational disruption. Watch this.
Warner Bros. Discovery said on Monday it would split into two companies. It's to separate its studios and streaming business from its fading cable television networks. The parent of HBO and CNN wants to compete better in the streaming era. The breakup is the latest sign of the great unravelling of decades of media consolidation, which created global conglomerates spanning content creation, distribution and, in some cases, telecommunications. The reset would provide Warner Bros. Discovery's streaming unit more room to scale by producing studio content, and without being held down by the declining cable networks business. Its CEO, David Zaslav, will lead the streaming and studios business after the breakup, while CFO Gunnar Weidenfels will head the global networks unit. This separation is expected to be completed by mid-2026. WBD shares were up nearly 6% in pre-market trading.
The news continues after this break. Stay with us.
Money is the sign of shortage. Money is not the sign of blessing, it is the sign of shortage. Money is not the evidence of blessing, it is the evidence of shortage. It is the evidence of lack. I know nobody ever told you that. So you better listen to me now. I walk in absolute prosperity, so I can tell you, money is not a sign of prosperity, it's a sign of lack. It's a game that defines the classification of people. Once you are able to see beyond it and understand what God's plan is and who you are not controlled by money. Money becomes your slave. Somebody said, I wish I heard what Pastor just said in the month of May. Month of blessing, I would have applied it. You still have time. We carry all the blessings of the previous month into the new ones. That's what we do. Never let the thought of money control your attitude.
Yes, sir.
You know, there are people who become happy when they have money. And when they don't have it, you can tell. You just look at them, you can tell. You can tell they're broken down. Money's their master. They're worshiping the God of Mammon. When you are delivered from that, or when you've not been enslaved by that, you don't know when you've had money and when you've not had money, because you don't operate with those numbers. La korabakasaya, rabakandalobosia. Are you still there?
Welcome back. The United Kingdom has imposed sanctions on two Israeli government ministers, Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich, citing their repeated calls for violence against Palestinians in the West Bank. Both officials have been banned from entering the UK, and any assets they hold in the country will be frozen. The sanctions, announced by Foreign Secretary David Lammy, were coordinated with Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and Norway. The UK government accused the ministers of undermining human rights and contributing to rising settler violence, which the Foreign Office said threatens a two-state solution. Israel responded by calling the move outrageous, with Foreign Minister Gideon Saar saying the cabinet would meet to consider a response. Smotrich dismissed the sanctions, referencing past British efforts to limit Jewish immigration during the British Mandate. The UK action follows a broader pattern of escalating criticism of Israel's military operations in Gaza and settlement expansion in the West Bank. Trade talks between the UK and Israel were suspended in May, and London has joined other Western nations in warning Israel against violations of international law. Watch this.
Today we are sanctioning Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir. We are acting alongside Australia, Canada, New Zealand and Norway, who have also announced their own measures today. These two men are responsible for inciting settler violence against Palestinian communities in the West Bank, violence which has led to the deaths of Palestinian civilians and the displacement of whole towns and villages. This violence constitutes an abuse of Palestinians' human rights. It is cruel, it is degrading, and it is completely unacceptable. We have told the Israeli government repeatedly that we would take tougher action if this did not stop. It still did not. Mr. Smotrich said there is no such thing as a Palestinian nation. Mr. Ben-Gvir has spoken of his rights in the West Bank, a territory his government is occupying, as being more important than the rights of millions of Palestinians. Their own words condemn them.
A deadly school shooting in Graz, Austria, has claimed 11 lives after a female victim succumbed to injuries sustained during Monday's attack. Authorities say the 21-year-old gunman, a former student at Dreische Schützengasse Secondary School, took his own life inside the building. It is the deadliest mass shooting in Austria's recent history. The suspect, an Austrian national with a valid firearms license, used a pistol and shotgun during the assault, according to police. He was not previously known to law enforcement. Interior Minister Gerhard Karner confirmed the attacker acted alone, and authorities are continuing to investigate the motive behind the incident. 7 of the victims were students and 12 others were injured, some critically. In response, Austria has declared 3 days of national mourning and scheduled a minute of silence for Wednesday. Chancellor Christian Stocker described the event as a national tragedy, stating the school's role as a safe space had been gravely violated. Local and European officials expressed condolences, while residents in Graz formed long lines of blood donation centers. The school remains closed and security has been tightened. The attack follows several smaller-scale shootings in recent years, marking a somber moment for the typically peaceful nation. Watch this.
10 this morning at the Dreische Schützengasse Secondary School in the heart of Austria's prosperous second city. 8 teenage students from 14 to 18 years old shot dead. 1 teacher also killed. Police indicate the gunman, a former student aged 21, then killed himself. At least 12 people were taken to hospital, some with serious and life-threatening injuries. Late this afternoon, it was announced 1 has died, bringing the total to 11 fatalities, including the gunman. A mother described how her son was inside the building at the time.
He had a mobile phone and was able to make calls right away, but I still haven't calmed down. It's unbelievable when you're sitting at home and don't know whether he's safe or not. That was distressing. And now I'm actually just thinking about how bad it is for the other parents.
Armed police units were quickly at the school. It was rapidly evacuated. A nearby sports stadium used as a safe haven.
Just before we end the news, let's take a quick look at tomorrow's weather forecast. And to end the news today, a quick recap of the headlines. President Trump says Iran is becoming more aggressive in nuclear talks as U.S. reviews options. RFK Jr. fires entire U.S. vaccine advisory panel over conflict concerns. Federal prosecutors reject immunity claims by Milwaukee judge accused of aiding illegal immigrants. Representative Issa calls for investigation into LAPD's delayed response to ICE assaults during LA riots. And the UK sanctions Israeli ministers over Palestinian violence remarks. And that's the news for today. Join us same time tomorrow for more news. I'm TGK Andre. Good night and God bless you.